thank you to everybody for joining the Present Your Thesis, Dissertation, or Research event. My name is Michelle Duong. I'm an intern architect at KWC Architects in Ottawa. And my co-host for today is Joe Callis, who's originally from Beirut, currently doing his PhD at Penn State. And our presenter is Renata Campiotto. And then we also have our experts joining us today. Joe will introduce them after the presentation, but we have Andreas from Greece, Mona, who's currently in Northern Italy, and Fulvio will be joining us as well. So I'll just go ahead and introduce Renata and we'll get started. So Renata Campiotto is an architect and urban planner, a PhD candidate at FAUSP at the University of São Paulo, in a double degree arrangement with the University of Ferrara, Italy. She has participated in several scientific cooperation projects from international institutions, such as the Conservation Management Program for the Villanova Chiesa building, Keeping It Modern program, the Getty Foundation, and she's an elected director of the board of the Association for Preservation Technology International, and a regular member of CIPA Heritage Documentation. She'll be defending her dissertation next week, hence today's event. And Renata, you can go ahead and share your screen and get started. She'll be giving a 25-minute presentation, after which we'll hear from the experts.
So just tell me, are you seeing my screen right now? Is it working? Perfect. So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are right now. Thank you for your presence. And first, I would like to thank Michelle and Joe and Margarita also for encouraging me to present. Michelle and Joe for the organization of the event, and also to the CIPA experts for finding a space in their August agenda, which I know can be tricky during vacation time. So thank you very much. And today I'm presenting my doctoral thesis that is entitled Techniques of Documentation, Survey and Diagnosis of the Built Heritage, the case of the Museu de Ipiranga. And I am aware of the limited time, so I have structured my talk around these four main topics. I will try to be on time. And to start, the theme arises from a personal question about the effectiveness of the documentation methods used for a specific case, that is the Museu de Ipiranga. This is a building that was constructed as a grand celebratory monument to Brazilian independence at the end of the 19th century. And over the decades, a series of interventions have taken place, of which stand out the excavations of the building's ventilation basement to meet the demand for more spaces for the institution, and also the replacement of surface coating that we know it's a huge problem in this type of construction technique. Because it did not consider the traditional masonry construction, and these both interventions over decades have contributed to the critical state the building was in 2013 when it was closed for renovation. So in this occasion, since it was closed and empty, it was unprecedented condition for a series of studies and investigations into the building in order to provide the necessary groundwork for the design decisions required for its grand reopening. And the goal was to have the museum fully restored and also expanded for the first time for the celebrations of the bicentennial of independence celebration that happened in last September 2022, which indeed happened. As you can see in this recent photo of the building and its gardens, it looks brand new. That's also a discussion that we'll have during the thesis. But the central goal of the research revolved around understanding the extent to which these studies, surveys, and diagnostics effectively contributed to the development of the executive project for the restoration. And for that, first of all, it was necessary to understand the museum and its constructive particularities, So the evaluation of the results of all those studies and surveys and diagnostics could be done rigorously. Special attention was also given to architectural survey through 3D laser scanning, because 3 surveys of this type with the application of this technology were conducted at the museum, 2 of them at the same time. So that's a very curious aspect of the research. The thesis is structured in 2 main parts. The first one that is presented here deals with the empirical and the theoretical objects of the work, that is the Museu de Ipiranga, and the documentation techniques. So I start the first chapter including a detailed description of the building, its values, its materials, its trajectory over time, over the decades, to understand what happened and why it was the way it was in 2013. So the second chapter presents an overview of the documentation discipline and its applications, without losing sight of the experiences that took place in the museum itself. So I try always to get back to my object of study, to not lose sight of it. So the last part assumes a more practical character, evaluating the laser scanning methodology, its potentialities. And in this case, the thesis proposes a critical assessment regarding the application of the method itself, which, as I was able to verify during the research, and specifically during seeing Brazilian practice, is often done automatically without an adequate preparation of the operator. So in this chapter, the method is explained, and the differences between the point clouds of the museum are demonstrated. As I said before, there are 3 point clouds. The first one was obtained through a contracted service. The other one was part of a scientific academic agreement. These both were performed at the same time in 2017. And the third one in 2019 was a donation by Autodesk. I did not have access to that database, but I was able to see the results and explain why and how it was produced. So regardless, at this point, the discussion revolves around why and how the difference from the 2 point clouds differ, why they differ, and considering mainly the accuracy of this type of equipment, what happened. So in the end of this chapter, 4 successful case studies of laser scanning application are presented, each of them originating from distinct contexts and having different objectives. So the research methods, they are based on 2 fundamental premises. The first one is that documentation is a cognitive act. So that means that through documentation, we can navigate a path of in-depth knowledge about our object of study, ensuring the contextualization of the findings. And likewise, each document consulted undergoes a critical process, because they are produced by social agents in a specific times and are interpreted by us, based on the overall goals of the operation. So documents are not neutral. And thinking about that, it was not possible to consult everything that was ever produced about the museum, because the research would not end. So I had to establish which documents were actually relevant for the research. So that means it is a critical process. Concerning the first part, the Museu de Ipiranga, the searches were conducted across various collections and referential bibliography works that enable the establishment of a comprehensive analytical framework, and the collected data that was considered relevant for the study were systematically correlated and organized within a spreadsheet, a database. And in this presentation, I have illustrated some of the research stages, and I think it's important to say that a significant part of this work was conducted during the pandemic, which posed significant challenges in terms of accessing libraries and archives and collections. But nevertheless, it was possible to find and organize previously unpublished information from various sources, which provided unprecedented historiographical clarifications that, although they are not directly related to the research, the ongoing research, they can assist future works to be developed. So they are also important pieces for the formal characterization of the building, especially linked to the construction technique adopted. So I tried to explain why all these documents were considered, how they were related to each other. And this research was also not limited to the building. It was also extended to the urban context because the changes in the city of São Paulo throughout the 20th century and the consequences in terms of preservation of built heritage played a fundamental role in the history of the museum, since the justification for its protection was due to those the changes in urban fabric. So you can see in these pictures, the one on the left that was taken when the building was inaugurated. You can see that it is in the middle of nowhere because it was very far from the city center. And then in the mid-70s, you can see that the city approached it, and also a huge process of verticalization around it. So this was one of the concerns for the government, and they have decided to list the building, not only the building, but the whole complex, that is the museum, the gardens in front of it, this big park that is in front of it, and the monument that conform this, we call it monumental axis. So in order to preserve the views from and for this complex, they decided for the protection. Here, I also brought an illustration of the database, which, although it's also one of the results of the work, it is essentially part of the research method because through the organization of the data, it became possible to assess the dynamics of intervention in the museum, thereby enabling an understanding of which were the periods that witnessed the most significant changes and whether they were preceded by studies or surveys that guided them or not, and their impact. So we can correlate what happened, why happened, and if it had some effect later. Now, for the theoretical part of the thesis, the methods used were based on a literature review on the discipline of heritage documentation, including the origins and consolidation of architectural survey, especially its applications and contributions to the restoration of monuments. With this overview drawn, it was made an evaluation of the studies carried out at the museum. So I had, chronologically speaking, I established the period from 2013 to 2018. That were the studies that were done to support the building recovery project and its reopening. Again, here are some illustrations of this analysis process. And one of the most interesting aspects in this part, at least for me, is the discussion on the representation of monuments and its impact on the history of architecture. We know that many of Viollet-le-Duc's drawings were based on his hypothesis about an imaginary state or aesthetic unity, as is the case of this illustration of the Palace of the Popes in Avignon on the left. But his contributions to the restoration discipline, and specifically the representation technique discipline, are still invaluable and are still great reference for studies today. So in this image, the two images on the right, you can see two illustrations, graphic illustrations of the tower in Évreux in France. And this time I propose the comparison of both of them. It's proposed a reflection. So which one of these drawings is the most accurate? The one produced by Viollet-le-Duc to illustrate his dictionary, or the one made by Richard Bonington, a romantic painter? And then in reality, the discussion revolves around both of these drawings are reliable because they both allow the total apprehension of the represented object, even though they were executed with different objectives and from different techniques. But then again, which one is the most accurate? For what? Because obviously for a restoration project, a painting would not serve as an absolute reference for decision-making processes. But that doesn't mean that when we look at this painting, we don't know what it is about. So it gives us a perception of what it is represented. So going back to the museum, here are some of the studies that were carried out in the context of its closure, which mainly have occurred because of the risk of falling pieces from the ceiling coverings and also sections of mortar from the facade. So it was really posing a risk not only for the people that was visiting the museum, but also for the collection itself. And then we can see that most of these studies focused on the structural condition of these elements. And then also a comprehensive laser scanning survey was produced by the Diaprem laboratory at the University of Ferrara in Italy. As I mentioned earlier, this was the one used for the restoration development. It was part of a scientific cooperation agreement between the institutions. This agreement envisioned not only the execution of the service, but also training of a team of researchers and architects involved in the museum's restoration project. And this training aimed to equip them with the capability to use the point cloud as a tool. Here are some illustrations of the winning design from the competition held in 2017. At the time of the competition, the drawings that were provided by the museum were not suitable for the project's development because they presented significant inconsistencies, as we will see next. Hence the need for new graphic bases and the participation of the architects in the training offered by Diaprem, which took place the year after the competition in 2018. So you can see in the proposed design that there are two main aspects in the proposal. That is the occupation of we call it esplanade, is the part in front of the museum. It was something that was taken into, it was obligation, all proposals had to occupy this area. And they have also created a new circulation, a vertical circulation system to connect the old part with the new part. But in their design, their original design, this structure was aligned with the main staircase, and it has to be changed. Why? Because the studies made after the competition proved that this was not possible to be excavated. This could pose a problem for the foundations. It would cost more than predicted. So they had to adapt to the project, and there's also other solutions that they had to adapt after those studies. I won't have time to delve into painting aspects, but it was also something that was discussed during the thesis. The choices they adopted, the analysis, the historical material, that it was not always taken into consideration by the project team, and that's okay, but it has to be discussed. And of course, finally, regarding the drawings, the drawing base provided by the museum, this overlay was created with two surveys conducted by the same company. So they handled both of these drawings. I overlaid them. And it's interesting to note that the topographic survey, that it was the one with the perimeter in red, do not match with the metrical architectural survey made by 3D laser scanning. So there is a significant distortion between those two products. So what this means, it indicates that the topographic data was not used during laser scanning, and similarly, it was not used as a reference during the point cloud processing and drawing execution stages. So other inconsistencies were also identified, such as the number of steps in the central staircase. Don't know why, but it rendered a product from a supposedly reliable technique that is completely unusable. And who can evaluate if this product was actually good for use or not? So we were lucky we had this other database. And when we compared the same drawing with the point cloud generated by the Diaprem laboratory, we see that the discrepancies also occur in the building's elevations. In fact, for this comparison, the elements chosen to overlay were the upper vertex of the front pediment in the case of the elevation. And in the case of the floor plans, it was used the segment of central access doors. So this means that the errors were distributed across both extents of the building, and still it resulted in a nearly 20 centimeter difference, which is a lot. Now on to the final part, which are the results obtained from this work. Let me just check the time. Well, first, through this research, it was possible to outline a comprehensive overview of the history of the Museu de Ipiranga and analyze how the interventions occurred over time. So the integration of diverse data enabled a holistic understanding of the building's trajectory and the impacts that certain decisions had on its materiality. Next, when it comes to the documentation procedures, it was demonstrated that this is a fundamental preliminary step in contributing to preservation of built heritage, provided, of course, that it is always grounded in scientific principles and executed with rigorous precision. So it is essential that all procedures adopted are guided by the ultimate goal of the operation and not done arbitrarily just to do it. So one of the key outcomes was the development and illustration of the operational laser scanning method in Portuguese language, based on specific literature, as well as national and international case studies. And finally, I know this is a lot of information, I'll try to explain it. There was also an expanded analysis of 4 applications of the 3D laser scanning technique for different projects in which I was involved during the research period. This demonstrates the potential of using point clouds in diverse contexts related to both expected results and the teams involved in each one of them. So just quickly, I will explain each one of them if I have time. So the first one is regarding the Villanova Chiesa's building. It involved the survey of the facades and the roofs of the building. They are both structures in exposed reinforced concrete. This project was linked to the development of the conservation management plan funded by the Keeping It Modern program, the Getty Foundation, and also involved the collaboration with the team from the University of Ferrara. One of the main conclusions from this case is related to the importance of survey planning, especially when considering logistical issues for mobilization of teams. Here's an example of 2 data acquisition project hypotheses. The first one on the left position the equipment at the intersection of the inverted beams at every 2 roof modules with a 30-meter range. The other one, the second hypothesis, instead position the scanner in the center of alternate modules with variable range. So the second hypothesis proved to be more suitable for environmental conditions of the roof and also in terms of time efficiency and result quality. As I mentioned earlier, this project was part of a scientific exchange agreement, so it was possible to deliberate on these issues collectively and test different possibilities and compare the results, which would not be possible in our second case, which is concerns the hiring of a company to perform this kind of service. So in this occasion, I was hired as a survey consultant to Instituto Pedro, which is an office of cultural projects in Brazil. And they needed an accurate data drawing base to develop restoration project of this huge complex in Rio de Janeiro. This complex comprises buildings constructed at different times and thus presenting different particularities of their own. So for hiring the company, a third-party company, to perform this service, we needed to, first of all, do a term of reference and then analyze the proposals, the commercial proposals by 5 different companies, and choose the one to do it in a collaborative way, because we needed to understand where the scanner was positioned, if it was adequate for the demands of the project for the architects.
2 minutes.
The third case, 5 minutes? 2 minutes, okay. Okay, I'm
sure.
almost
No, yeah, go ahead.
The third case recounts the experience of the research internship abroad, which I conducted at the University of Ferrara last year. So during this internship, I had the opportunity to observe the didactic experience of the courses of architectural survey and representation techniques that are offered to first and second year architecture students. In one of the classes, the final project was involved modeling the Museu de Ipiranga, so it was really good to be there and watch the students doing it, because they were using the point cloud produced by Diaphragm, but they also needed information on the building and on the construction technique, because they couldn't go to Brazil to check the building in person and go back and do the modeling. So during this phase, it was also possible to discuss aspects of the didactics of these courses, because they don't have a direct correspondence in the Brazilian academic curriculum. So it was nice to see how they deal with these themes in the university. And finally, the experience at the CIPA Spring School, which was held in March of this year in Montecatini Terme, was also included in the thesis as a way to discuss how this type of methodology is addressed in scientific events aimed at disseminating knowledge to professionals and enthusiasts in the field. So it was a great experience that provided valuable insights, particularly regarding the integration of results using different techniques. As we can see in this case, the combination of topographic survey, photogrammetry, and laser scanning. And once again, thank you again for your attention. If I exceeded a little bit of the time, the thesis defense in person will happen next week, Tuesday, in Portuguese, will take place in São Paulo, and online via this link of Google Meets. Thank you.
Thank you, Renata. That was really interesting. It's a really interesting subject and really interesting case for our thesis, and I'm sure our experts have great questions and feedback for you. So today, unfortunately for Ronaldo wasn't able to join us today for this feedback. However, we still have 2 experts with us, which are Mona Hess and Andrea Georgopoulos. So for Mona Hess has graduate degrees in architecture from Munich University of Technology and heritage conservation from the University of Bamberg. She completed her PhD degree in 3D imaging metrology for cultural heritage from the University College London in 2015, but has been involved with digital documentation of cultural heritage buildings and artifacts since 2004. In 2017, she became a full professor for digital technologies and heritage conservation at the University of Bamberg in Germany, and is the course director for their new master's program. She has published over 30 scientific papers and book chapters in the cultural heritage and geomatics community, and is an avid peer reviewer for ISPRS conferences and the EU. She has been a CIPA expert member since 2019 and is an incoming commission chair on education and dissemination for 2024. Andreas is Emeritus Professor at the National Technical University of Athens and member of the ICOMOS board, serving as General Secretary. He has also served as President of CIPA, is currently the Vice President, and will be the Commission Co-Chair on Education and Dissemination. He has participated as a guest speaker in seminars organized by the Technical Chamber of Greece, the Greek Center of Productivity, and the Laboratory of Photogrammetry. He has also instructed at unorganized international workshops, including ArchDoc and the Raymond Lemaire International Center of Conservation in Leuven. He has published many book chapters and more than 280 scientific papers in peer-reviewed international journals and conference proceedings. His research interests focus on 3D modeling for cultural heritage, photogrammetric automation, and contemporary digital techniques. So for our 2 experts, the floor is yours.
Would you like me to start, or who would like? No, Mona,
Okay.
you start. Mona, you start.
Okay, let's see. It's like it's for me as well as for you. It's also like a rehearsal in this context with the emerging professionals to be the expert giving a feedback on a PhD. So my first time as well here. Can I ask before I start another question that maybe I haven't recorded well in my head? So in which faculty and which subject is the PhD in?
Can I answer right now?
Yeah, if you briefly answer that. Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is the Architecture and Urbanism School of Architecture and Urbanism at the University of São Paulo in Brazil, and with a double degree agreement with the University of Ferrara, also in architecture. So
Okay.
yeah, it's both universities, but
Yeah.
the home institution is the University of São Paulo.
Okay, sorry for making you repeat this, but it just didn't enter my mind correctly. So it's not geomatics or surveying. So that's
No, it's
important
it's in
as an information.
The department inside the School of Architecture is History and Fundamentals of Architecture and Urbanism, but it's all condensed in the Architecture and Urbanism main program.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks very much. So now I'm going to launch into some sort of a monologue because I think this is what is expected, which I have also seen in the Italian defenses. So I'm going to be talking now for a couple of minutes and hope my internet connection will be holding up. So thanks very much for your presentation here on the topic, which is very comprehensive, but has one main case study, which is the Museum of Ipiranga. And I found very good in the presentation of your PhD topic, how you outlined your main research questions, essentially your objectives for this research that you would like to go about and answer. Also very good, I found how you outlined the structure, not only of your talk, so I assume that probably in your written document it will have a similar structure, possibly. So I found this very good, how you also structure this into theoretical, empirical, and then practical parts. So that's very good. I also very much enjoyed the introduction in the historiography of the display of the drawing, and certainly that was only one piece. One example with Viollet-le-Duc of what you might have expanded in a bigger chapter, because clearly it's, and I've seen this in your other papers that you sent, that you usually also take references to newer new publications, like one by Carbonara, which made me hungry, the name, quite nice. So I think this is probably a reflection on a state of the art that is part of a bigger chapter, which I hope. So I found this very good, and then you launched into the methods of your examination, of your research, which is essentially looking at existing surveys where you were partly involved. And you finished up with about 4 case studies that you were also partly involved. And so and they were all comprehensive and I understood it very well. But maybe now I come to the points that I found maybe critical and that you could work on better for presenting it in next week. Because what I would do is somehow try to separate what you have done personally and yourself. So maybe this is a PhD, you need to shine yourself. Go away from, we have done the research with 1,000 other people's, but what is it that you have done personally? What is your contribution? How much time have you spent there? What was your concept for launching this? And I know from the presentation of Ipiranga Digital that you are the coordinator. What is your, so I've seen the paper from the CIPA just a couple of weeks ago. What is your personal weight in this, in the sense of other people couldn't be working without you? So you need to make this much more apparent. And in this also maybe, so you've done a lot of work here, so it could be presented in the overview of what you have as a method chapter in a more abstract way. So now you've got the main case study and 4 other case studies just in one page, in one grid. What are the outcomes, and discuss these. So what I'm missing is a discussion on the outcomes. So an abstract discussion that evaluates plus or minus and gives a framework where you can say, I have developed this framework, the thresholds for a good documentation for architectural interventions, rebuilding this needs to be, I don't know, and then a number, now going more geomatics, but accuracy is X. So what is, so discuss, put a discussion in the end, say, so this is the outcome. For example, for one of the case studies I wrote down, you did the tendering. So that means you invited companies to give you answers. So you could say, I have been assisting the tendering, and the outcomes are that you need to, I don't know, have a very strict rules for the results to come back okay. And so you can put this in a comprehensive discussion that will make you shine, in the sense, will show that you are capable and have acquired more skills and expertise during your PhD. I wouldn't really end it with, in the end, I attended a course for master students in Italy. I would not end it like this. I find this a bit difficult. You can maybe say, I cooperated in leading the students in modeling. So you had a leading role, not you're participating as one of the many. So this is how I would maybe pitch it differently. Yes, and I would maybe also mention Ipiranga Digital. That is now a new project where you're the coordinator. Yeah, that's it from me.
Thank you very much. It's a very good practice here today, because some of this I've been studying. This was a part that I cut off the presentation because it was getting too long. But I thought of starting it, contextualizing my participation in this research, because it's already a 5-year research. Actually, it's a little bit more, because I started as a intern in the museum in 2013. Some of those studies I was I was working on it. That's why I had all these questions and issues, and try to understand why the things that I was participating were not used on the final decision processes. But actually, so I have entered the graduate program in 2018 with a master's program, and then we changed it to what we call it direct doctorate, because our academic structure in Brazil is I don't know if it's very different from all others or from most of them, but we have the 5-year undergraduate course, and then if we want to pursue an academic career, then we do the master's after 2 years, and only that, then we do the doctorate 5 years. So it's a very long trajectory. And I was afraid of taking time of the presentation to explain it and to contextualize it. But I agree, I should be more incisive, maybe on what were my roles in each one of those case studies as well. And I will try to adapt the presentation for next week. So of course it was it's very good to hear it from you. Thank you very much.
And congratulations for your English, because that was very good.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mona, for those great constructive feedback for Renata, which I'm sure she'll be using to adjust her presentation for next week. So Andreas, would you like to go now? Just a quick note for the other participants in the chat that if you want to ask questions for Renata, go ahead. You can whether use the Q&A section or the chat to directly address that, to directly ask questions. And if we had time, we can take one or two at the end. So Andreas, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Joe. Renata, congratulations for your presentation and the work you have done. I'm not going to repeat everything that Mona has said, to which I 99% agree. So I will try to give you some advice, and please accept it as such for your final presentation, which I trust will last a little bit longer than 20 minutes or 25 minutes, okay? It will be something like 30 or 40 or 45 minutes presentation. So one question out of curiosity is, what is exhibited in this museum?
Yes, it's the largest collection of material culture. So we have everything. We have medals, we have paintings, we have a huge painting that actually the museum was made to celebrate the Brazilian independence. So most of it collection is related to the history of Brazil. And we have this huge painting that represents we call it the independent, when the former prince of Portugal declared independence of Brazil and became imperator of Brazil. So, but when actually this introduction about the museum itself, I did not go into it because it's a lot, but
no, it's okay.
But I do understand that it's important to understand the building, because in the 60s, it was the university assumed it as part of the university. So they started to contextualize the production of the collection. So it's not only an art museum; it's also a place of research, and it's actually a unit of the university. So you have a lot of activities there, and a lot of groups of students that go there to understand the history of Brazil and so on.
Okay, because this also gives a good idea of the context of the building. The building has also a content, okay? And this helps other people who do not know the building to understand it a little bit better. Okay, so to my mind, a PhD must have some innovations, must have some advancements of the world knowledge. So, and you should present that at the very beginning of your presentation. You should introduce your research questions, and then the next slide should be, okay, after 5 years or so many years of PhD work, I have contributed to world knowledge by 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever bullets. So this is something that shows off your work, and you are at a stage that you should show off your work, okay? Because you're being examined about that. And in the end, I find it very useful from other PhD presentations, and believe me, I have attended a lot. You end up with those, let's say, bullets, innovation bullets of yours, and then you justify that these are innovative by relating them to papers that you have published. And the question that was put in the email by Mona, please, if you have any papers that you have published, I think aims at exactly that. So you have exposed your work to the international community, scientific community, and it was accepted, okay? You don't have to have, let's say, 150 publications, but key publications in journals, peer-reviewed or peer-reviewed conferences should indicate that your innovations have been accepted and have been respected by the community and considered worth publishing. So these are two pieces of advice that I can give you on that. You don't have to elaborate now and tell me what your innovations are. I sense them from your presentation. And now I come to surveying and laser scanning. So in the first drawing that you showed, the red lines, and it was the topographic survey, the geodetic survey anyway, and the black lines were the laser scanning. It's obvious that there is a rotation. If you carefully look at the discrepancies, there is a rotation. Either the laser scanning should be rotated or the survey. And when you compare methods, even when you compare laser scans, you should always compare them on a fair basis. You cannot compare, let's say, a point cloud that was produced by a laser scanner that has 5 or 6 millimeters accuracy with another point cloud that is capable of producing 2 or 3 millimeters accuracy. Okay, so comparisons should always be made on a fair basis to the so that your results and your conclusions are sound and should be respected by your audience. And a final advice is that you should manage your time in such a way that you don't speak very fast. You were not speaking fast now, and I know that Portuguese, like Spanish and like Greek, are very fast languages, but it's better if you take off some information and speak freely, slowly, so that you send your messages across to the audience and to your examiners. Congratulations again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. I just wanted to say one thing regarding the comparison of the bases. Actually, yes, it was really hard to find a common how to compare, because they are different. They are not the same product. One is a point cloud, the other one is are the drawings that are produced from a point cloud. So that is explained in the thesis. But since I was able to see the execution of both laser scanning surveys, I saw some method problems with the contracted company. They placed the targets on movable surfaces such as doors and windows, and they did not have a planning to do so. So they were just distributing the targets everywhere and positioning the scanner, the equipment anywhere. So this is all discussed on the thesis, because the main aspect of discussing laser scanning application is how it is done, not the results itself, but the methodology itself. So we have to understand why are we using it, if it's really needed to be used, do we need this kind of precision, and for what? So that's hence the discussion on the Viollet-le-Duc's drawings, for example, because they are usually say that these are not real. They invented it. But at some point, okay, he might invented it, but we have this, we can see what he was trying to do, and we can understand where it came from. We have to confront the results in order to understand the methodology. So this was kind of the idea. And I thank you for pointing out that for me. We are so into the research for several years that sometimes things just, we think that people should know, and we just talk about it briefly and focus on things that maybe are not important for the discussion at the moment. So thank you very much, Andreas. Of course, I will take into consideration all the comments.
Congratulations again, Renata.
Thank you.